Hello and welcome to this News9 special. Now, the Reserve Bank of India is targeting around 1 million daily E-Rupee transactions by the end of 2023. But just rupees 16.3 crore worth of E-Rupee are in circulation. Why is the takeoff so low? Do we really need a rupee when there's UPI for digital transactions? Well, watch this documentary to understand the complications involved in it. Well, take a look at it.
साथियों, आज के अखबारों में सेंट्रल बैंक डिजिटल करेंसी की भी काफी चर्चा है। इससे डिजिटल इकोनॉमी को बहुत बल मिलेगा।
Introduction of a central bank digital currency will give a big boost to digital economy.
डिजिटल पेमेंट, ऑनलाइन पेमेंट, रिटेल पेमेंट ज्यादा सुरक्षित होगा, रिस्क फ्री होगा। इससे कैश को प्रिंट करने, हैंडल करने, डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करने में जो बोझ पड़ता है वो भी कम होगा।
E-Rupee is digital rupee. Quite simply put, it's India's own digital currency. Just like you have your currency notes which you can hold in your hands physically, this one you can hold the E-Rupee in a digital form, in a virtual form, in a wallet online. The E-Rupee is essentially India's CBDC or Central Bank Digital Currency. The Reserve Bank of India, India's central bank, launched the E-Rupee officially on the 1st of December 2022. And since then, the E-Rupee is being tried out in a pilot by a few traders and a few individuals in the country. And as of now, there are about 16.5 crore rupees worth of E-Rupees available, which is less than 0.0001% of all the currency notes of rupees that's available in the country.
You don't print, and creating a digital currency is no cost. Absolutely no cost. It is like you and I creating a painting on a computer. Right, so it's no cost. It goes into your routine IT computer links that you maintain or Wi-Fi you maintain, so it will go like that. It saves a lot of hassles to RBI. It saves the fake currency issue also, because if there is no print, there is no fake currency. It's all digital.
Around 130 countries across the world, which account for 98% of the world's GDP, are all developing their own CBDC or central bank digital currency. 19 of the G20 countries are in advanced stages of launching their CBDC. Including India, 11 countries across the world have already launched their own digital currency pilots. And all of them have happened at the same time as we've seen the rise of cryptocurrency. But there are fundamental differences between a cryptocurrency and a central bank digital currency, although both of them are digital assets.
Now, CBDC is not crypto. A lot of people confuse with it, because crypto is a virtual digital asset. Asset means what? I buy a crypto of 100 rupees. Its value is not backed by anything. Its value is based on the trade, how the trade happens, and more so in crypto, different from the other asset class like mutual fund or shares. So it is not only the trade, but also the innovations which happen, the net innovations on Web3 which adds value to this crypto. So the crypto value may become 200 of 100 rupees or may sort of slump down to 50 rupees or 10 rupees. So that is a risk factor on which the crypto works. But if you look at CBDC, it's like a printed rupee note, legal tender in your wallet. So it is a digital legal tender and therefore called E-Rupee. And you buy that, so 100 rupees will remain 100 rupees today, tomorrow, 50 years down the line, right? So nothing is going to happen to it. It's neither going to grow or reduce.
In case of cryptocurrency, it is issued using the blockchain. It is an open big book, which is open for everybody to read, if one tries to do that. Whereas in case of e-currency, which is issued by Reserve Bank of India, proposed to be issued, already pilots are going on, or by any central bank, the information is not available for public reading. Of course, it will be available with the issuing central bank, but not for the public reading. Any central bank in the world would be concerned about the nature of cryptocurrency, how it can operate, what use it can be put to, and probably apart from the ease of transacting and so many other things, cost included, but I think that is probably the most dominant factor weighing in the minds of central bank to offer public something which is digital currency, but which is not carrying this kind of risk.
The Reserve Bank of India launched the E-Rupee pilots in partnership with a collection of a few banks in the country who chose to take part in these trials. While the E-Rupee does come with certain advantages, so far the offtake has been low because of all the uncertainties attached with a digital currency.
Why currency is used by the people? Why people prefer to use currency? Because of the two features. And those two features are ease of transacting and anonymity. Now, in case of digital currency, while the ease of transacting could eventually materialize, as I said, connectivity etc. could be some issue, but ultimately at one point of time they will be all taken care of. So that will be taken care of, but to convince the user about the anonymity, there would still be a challenge, because unlike crypto, while it will not be an open book, but again these all transactions would be recorded in the central bank's book. So in that sense is not exactly what a paper currency is, where it is a trail is completely anonymous. So I think that will be a challenge.
With UPI exploding beyond anyone's expectations, questions now remain on the actual usability and the use case for an E-Rupee. In how many instances will the E-Rupee be more advantageous to use than UPI, which helps you conduct digital transactions either way?
There is no future for CBDC in the retail market. Because I'll tell you the drawbacks of the CBDC. CBDC does not earn interest. Like I told you, your 100 rupees remain 100 rupees. Whereas in digital UPI payments, whether I'm doing it through RTGS or NEFT or through mobile or through a wallet, till I pay, I'm earning interest on it. So nothing is going to happen to it, right? Then when I pay to somebody, A pays to B, the B starts getting interest on it in their saving accounts the moment it enters their account. It's only the current account there is no interest, otherwise there is an interest. One. Number two, you can pay to the last unit. So if you have to pay 97 rupees 23 paisa, you can do that. Whereas in CBDC, you will have to buy a 100 rupee note or 50 rupee note, then 10 rupee, 10 rupee, 10 rupee, 10 rupee, 4 note, and then you have to round off to the highest, because there is nothing like 3 rupee note, or buy 1 rupee note, and that paisa then again you will have to do. So every time you will have to download that kind of a digital currency by again paying digitally. So you pay digitally to RBI, download CBDC, then pay to B, and then the B also either keeps it as it is or converts into digital money. So instead of doing that, you can digitally directly pay from A to B through UPI. Absolutely. And with a minimal cost. Practical usages have a limitation as on date, because we have a great option of digital payment wholesale through RTGS, IMPS, NEFT, where all financial institutions and now even post office and cooperative banks, they have digitized, are all linked. So there is no problem. And similarly, the retail is completely linked. There is no problem.
My personal sense is it would be easy to navigate on the part of wholesale, which will be between the institutional players which have a robust technology, robust connectivity system, robust risk management, and probably there it can move with much greater speed than on the retail side.
It can be a much more efficient system. Today when you do a transaction, suppose you pay me through UPI, payment first goes to your bank accounts get debited, then it comes to my bank account. So it's a very complicated process. There is NPCI in between. So depending upon the design, it all depends upon the design also. If it is really E-Rupee which is in offline mode, where at the time of transaction banks are not involved, then it can be a very efficient and cost-effective system. The only pitfall is that if system doesn't work even for, say, if there is a disruption for 30 minutes, what will you do? Imagine you are cashless and there is, for some reason, there is a disruption. What will people do?
Well, as you have seen this interesting documentary that talks about the digital rupee as such. In the studio we have with us Krishna, who has actually been looking at this documentary, who has made it and also has done extensive research on the subject as well. Krishna, on one side at G20, we were in fact talking about the regulations on crypto, and on the other side, you are trying to push in the digital aspect of the rupee. Somewhere a little eccentric?
Well, eccentric is a nice choice of word. It's a very interesting choice of word. Actually, Amit and I have been talking about cryptocurrencies for a very long time, and then we were thinking about how we're going to take this forward. And as we're talking about cryptocurrencies, we saw efforts being taken by the Reserve Bank of India to push the usage of E-Rupee. We kept getting updates on a regular basis. First, it was the launch of QR code. You can use your UPI QR code to conduct E-Rupee transactions. That was one move. And now you have the latest, which is as of yesterday, you have the government, the Reserve Bank of India, telling banks for interbank borrowing operations to do the interbank borrowing operations using the E-Rupee. So the government, in the form of the RBI, which issues the E-Rupee, it's a central bank digital currency, it's issued by the RBI, and the RBI is finding more and more ways of more and more usage of the E-Rupee. They're getting more and more banks. Bear in mind, all of this is in a pilot stage. There's a wholesale pilot and there's a retail pilot that's going on. Wholesale pilots are for large organizations to conduct their banking transactions using the E-Rupee. The retail pilots are meant for individuals who are chosen by the banks who are participating in the E-Rupee pilot to use to have an online wallet. All those images you saw of the E-Rupee, those wallets, it's because there's some people, very few select people, have been given the chance to use it and see how it goes. So we are in that test stage, essentially speaking, and so are all G20 countries, so to speak. 11 of the G20 countries, including India, have launched their CBDC or central bank digital currency pilots. Now, there hasn't been much success with any particular central bank digital currency, be it the US or China or the UK. Every country has launched, has not found much success. But India, obviously, India had a breakthrough in the form of UPI, and that essentially is what complicates the matter. No country in the world has a digital transaction platform like UPI that supports 1.5 billion people to transact on a daily basis. So India has sort of broken through that tech barrier to have UPI, and hence the question of how much of usage will E-Rupee find. As far as UPI is concerned, money goes from your bank account to somebody else's bank account digitally, hassle-free, all of it, just that the money earns interest as long as it stays in your account. Whereas the CBDC is concerned, the E-Rupee, which lies in your online wallet, does not earn any interest, and that's a very important factor. And also bear in mind, when it comes to cash, the biggest advantage is anonymity. You can spend money the way you deem fit without being tracked. Whereas the E-Rupee, every paisa of the E-Rupee gets tracked by the Reserve Bank of India. So there's lack of anonymity over there, and there is an availability of a better option like UPI. So my question is, how much of usage will E-Rupee find in the retail space? Now, whereas the wholesale space is concerned, and also inter-country transactions are concerned, large blocks of money moving between countries, then the E-Rupee and the online wallet, has a huge use case scenario that's being explored as we speak. But with RBI's consistent efforts to push the use of E-Rupee, specifically for interbank transactions, huge money being transferred, which means that it will reduce the load on UPI as well, because bear in mind, UPI requires a lot of affirmation. First, you get an affirmation that the money has been debited from your bank account, a confirmation, and then it goes to somebody else's bank account, it's confirmed that it's gone to their bank account. So a lot of confirmation takes place, a lot of load on the systems per se. So this is one way of taking the load of the system so that people can use UPI more than banks and other institutions. So that's one way of looking at it. And the other is the fact that to reduce the cost of printing currency notes eventually, if you get to a stage where a lot of UPI takes place and a lot of E-Rupee is also in the mix, the actual physical currency notes that you require might come down. And consequently, the cost of printing those currency notes and storing those currency notes and transporting those currency notes. So these are some of the long-term visions with which the E-Rupee is being pushed at this stage. It'll be interesting to see what kind of adoption it gets, even at the institutional level, at the corporate level, leave alone the retail level.
Well, that's quite interesting. Let me get Amit also into the discussion, saying that Krishna raised a very pertinent point. He said that the question about anonymity in your spending, which you had with your notes, is not going to be available because it is going to be tracked, each of your. That could be some kind of a worry, because a lot of people don't want to know what kind of transaction they were into.
Yeah, so that's the world we are moving into, and I believe cash is not going to go away completely for that very reason.
Because in a country like India, we have UPI, we have cash. It's not the cash, and we also use our credit cards and debit cards. So all kinds of transactions.
In fact, it's only cash where you have your anonymity. Every other transaction, there is no anonymity. It is being tracked. And so cash is not going to go away.
Yeah, I fully agree with him, because we just did another documentary before, which is about seigniorage. Seigniorage essentially refers to the profits that the RBI makes for printing and storing and transportation of currencies. Where you have a certain, say, 100 rupee note actually costs about 8 rupees, but it's sold to banks at 100 rupees. So the seigniorage on a single 100 rupee note is 92 rupees. So there is so when we're doing that story, we realize the fact that the amount of cash, the physical cash in circulation today is far more higher than it was in pre-demonetization or pre-UPI days. How is it possible that we have a UPI, which is one of the best digital transaction platforms in the world, the best and the biggest in the world, and still we use so much cash? So that tells you a lot about human tendency for sure. So, and also, like Rajneesh Kumar of SBI was talking about the documentary. What about in the future, so-called completely cashless future? And there's internet is down for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour. What happens to all that? What happens to all the transactions? So connectivity is a big important factor to bear in mind. But we're talking about the arrival of everything from Starlink to Geo expanding into 5G and 6G. So I'm thinking that now we're sort of building up our connectivity levels simultaneously. So I'm not sure if that will be the big deterrent. Anonymity could be a big deterrent for sure.
Yeah. Anonymity could be a big deterrent. Well, in that case, we are going to another topic completely, and this is regarding the middle class and their taxation. So how does the middle class, in fact, look into the taxation? Well, that is an aspect of the entire documentary that we are going to see next. Is it fair that the middle class is being taxed when it compares itself to the corporates? And it looks like the middle class, a record of 13.5 crore Indians, in fact, had broken the shackles of poverty and joined the middle class in the last 5 years. Of that, 6.77 crore people who filed income tax returns this year, 95% were from the middle class. Is this the segment bearing most of India's tax burden? That's a big question we're asking. Watch this documentary and we'll come in for the analysis.
5 साल में 13.5 करोड़ मेरे गरीब भाई बहन गरीबी की जंजीरों को तोड़ करके न्यू मिडिल क्लास के रूप में बाहर आए। जीवन का इससे बड़ा कोई संतोष नहीं होता।
In any country, it will be the middle class who will pay taxes, who will contribute to the growth of the economy. That burden will remain on middle class.
I don't agree. The problem with the middle class is that it often feels that we pay the taxes, but we are not getting enough in return.
India's middle class is bursting at the seams. There were about 430 million people in the family income bracket of 5 to 30 lakh rupees 2 years back. This number will jump to 715 million by 2030 and a mammoth 1 billion by 2047 as per the Price ICE 360-degree survey. This middle class is the section that is most ignored by the politicians and most axed when it comes to taxes. This year, 6.7 crore Indians filed income taxes, up from 5.83 crores last year. Fair to assume that a big chunk of these tax filers are the middle class. Is the burden of economic growth resting solely on the shoulders of the Indian middle class?
Who else? The tax will also be paid by somebody who can afford it. If you have still, well, despite such a huge middle class, but you have a huge number of people, but still their capacity to contribute in that sense, it is limited. So in any country, it will be the middle class who will be the conscience keeper of the society, who will pay taxes, who will contribute to the growth of the economy. That burden will remain on middle class.
I don't agree. The problem with the middle class is that it often feels that we pay the taxes, but we are not getting enough in return. But that also leads to a social insularity of the middle class, where it is consumed by its own self-interest. In a country where perhaps the number of those below it are as big and certainly more deprived.
Look at it from the world perspective. By and large, you cannot say in India the direct tax rates are high, and with 6 crore odd people paying taxes in a population of 130 crore, my total collection is roughly 13 to 14 lakh crore rupees. And when I look at the macro pictures, total taxes being collected by India per capita GDP, what we call a GDP, suffer roughly 11 to 12%. In advanced nation that are aware, it is 17, 18, 19%.
The burden is not just on account of direct income tax that the middle class is subjected to, but even indirect taxes like the GST on everything we purchase: products, services, entertainment, food, you name it.
Almost 54 to 60% of their income goes in direct and indirect taxes across various streams, depending on, of course, the income tax slab. It could be as little as 25 to 30% of overall income going into the taxation, direct and indirect, to as high as 60.
I believe rates somewhere are reasonable because somebody has to fill in the kitty. And one must keep in mind, the moment you reduce some taxes for some category of person, you have to find immediately equal amount from some other person.
95% of the taxpayer don't pay heavy taxes, even individuals.
Of the direct tax filers, close to 70% filed zero tax returns. The government collected 38.3 lakh crore rupees in taxes, direct and indirect, in the last financial year, a 21% jump from the previous year and a 316% jump from the years 2008 and 2009. Now here's the question: have incomes jumped by the same quantum?
We have to collect more direct taxes. There's absolutely no doubt about that. At the moment, we are collecting only 6% of GDP as direct taxes. Most developing countries also collect 9, 10, 11% of tax GDP ratio, and the developed countries collect 20, 22%.
In order to increase the share of direct taxes in the GDP, an even higher tax rate could well make a case for complete elimination of indirect taxes. No question of double taxation whatsoever. No GST, nor any other indirect taxes.
I do not have a definitive view on it because by definition I am not an economist. But the same middle class that often grumbles about high income tax rates will do the same when direct taxes go up. Ultimately, the government needs resources, and the middle class, or at least the prosperous among the middle class, have to pay them.
Indirect taxes put an unfair burden on the middle class and the lower classes. Okay, that's why they're called regressive. Okay, Regressive means suppose you consume 1 kilo of salt. Now the rich would also consume 1 kilo of salt, the poor would also consume say 1 kilo of salt, and on that salt there's only that 20 paisa of tax. Okay, the rich pays 20 paisa, he also pays 20 paisa, but as a fraction of the income for the rich it's nothing, but as a fraction of income for the poor or the middle class it is high. Okay, that's why it's called regressive, right? So indirect taxes tend to be regressive, and that's why they put an unfair burden. But if you collected more of direct taxes, then you could lower the indirect taxes, and that would lower the inflation rate, and that would enable greater consumption from the poor and the middle classes. And if that were to happen, then the rate of growth of the economy would also go up.
As far as indirect tax is concerned, it impacts everybody. Whether you are poor, rich, super rich, middle class, whoever you are, if you have to pay 18% GST, you have to pay 18% GST. So it is all about direct tax. The burden obviously is being borne by the middle class. But then again, I am coming to the point that I don't mind paying the tax. What I don't like the complications around the tax law.
In India, the taxation begins at about 5 lakhs of rupees, but with deductions, etc., you begin to pay taxes at 7 lakhs of rupees. Okay, so those who are between say 7 lakhs and 30 lakhs, okay, those who are supposed to be the middle class, their burden of tax is hardly 15-20%. Okay. Because you have concessions, deductions and various other things. Like on PPF you don't pay tax, on 80C investment you don't pay tax, 80G you don't pay tax, then on 50,000 rupees of bank interest you don't pay tax, etc. So with all these things you're only paying 15-20% of tax, whereas your income is at least 5 to 20 times greater than the per capita income.
And the complexity deepens further with the new tax regime. In the old tax regime, you have more tax deductions and higher slab rates. In the new tax regime, no deductions and low tax slabs. So on the same income, your tax return changes from one regime to another. How does that even make sense?
I do agree. One perception about the salaried people is that we are not able to manage our taxes mainly because we are not able to manipulate it.
So you see the evidence in the GST, for instance. Now it is being revealed that in the last few years, thousands of crores of GST is being evaded. Now GST is paid by the organized sector. Okay, the unorganized sector doesn't come in its ambit. It suggests that black income generation is very high. So if you could curb the black income generation, your corporate tax collection would shoot up.
The tax system, while complex and seemingly unfair, also puts money in the coffers of the government to create infrastructure and make other capital investments. That's good for the economy to continue chugging. But is it fair to continue to expect the middle class to keep footing the bill?
So at some point, the middle class will turn around, hopefully turn around and ask this question: what am I getting in return for that 60% of my income going away to various forms of the government?
Any democracy has competing interests. And the one thing nobody likes to pay is something to the government which comes from their quote-unquote hard-earned money, for which they always believe the returns are less than what they expected.
Well, to discuss about it, we have with us Amit Rajan, who has looked into this aspect, and I like what the guest actually said. Nobody is willing to pay from their hard-earned money to the government for which the returns are less. Is that the perception driving the middle-class taxpayer?
Exactly, you hit it, and Mr. Pawan Verma hit it right in the nail in the coffin, in the head. Sorry, not in the coffin. Everybody, and we pay, all three of us pay a large chunk of our income into the middle, in the form of tax, direct taxes. And then for everything that we purchase, like the documentary said, we are paying indirect taxes. So in all, almost 60% of our income is going into paying of taxes. Now, that's obviously unfair, and nobody would like to believe it is fair in the first place. And that is why there's one suggestion that came in out of the documentary, that if indirect taxes are totally done away with because they are regressive, and even if you increase the direct taxes, the middle class will be complaining little less, because on every purchase, then they are not paying a tax. They are just paying one lump sum at one time, and they know they have to pay that much, and they don't have to worry about taxes on everything else that they spend their money on.
So in that aspect, when we look at it, where is the pinch actually really felt? It is through the indirect or the direct taxes, or that both, a combination of both is actually what is pinching the purse strings of the middle class?
What pinches is that if I am paying 30% of my income in taxes, and then I know that even what is remaining out of that is going into taxes of all sorts on every purchase that I make, on every investment that I make, on everything that I do. Whether it is GST or in real estate, whether it is other kinds of service taxes or sales taxes, they are going there. So the pinch is over there, that I am being taxed in everything that I do, and on top of that I am paying an income tax that could go as high as 33%.
All right. So that aspect of it is well taken. Let us in fact take a look at how the aspect of the corporates are in fact looking into this taxation part of it. That's the next documentary that we are going to in fact air for you, how corporate taxation has been actually on the decline while the taxes for the middle class have remained the same. So let's take a look at that.
The reduction in taxes for the corporate sector will be resented by the middle class even when they are employed by a corporate firm themselves.
Corporates have to be taxed less than the individuals.
There have been economic schools in the US, Europe, UK who say no, you should have zero tax on corporations.
It's not the middle class which is paying bulk of the direct taxes. It's the business class which is paying bulk of the direct taxes.
The story starts from 1991, the first big budget that people talk about in even economics classrooms. At that time, the corporate tax was as high as 45%. Today, depending on your revenue, it's between 25 and 30%. In the same time, individual income tax rates are more or less the same. It's 30% in the biggest slab. The gap between government collection of corporate taxes and income taxes has gone down to a mere 0.2 lakh crores, from 10 times that amount just a decade ago. There's one question that stares us in the face after looking at these statistics. Should the corporations that make so much more money than individuals be paying a little bit more to the government?
When you say you are taxing corporations less or more, who are you taxing? Eventually, it is the owners of that corporation, right? The shareholders. So you're doing that, you're collecting taxes at one stage, the corporation, and then you're going to tax them again when they get money. So, I mean, this issue that somehow corporation is a separate person is wrong in just economics tax theory.
All governments face this problem of towing that fine line between incentivizing the corporate structure, because ultimately that is the biggest employer, apart from agriculture traditionally. Corporate growth is important for the country, and to that extent, the reduction in taxes for the corporate sector will be resented by the middle class even when they are employed by a corporate firm themselves. That's the irony of it.
If you go by the classical, so corporates have to be taxed less than the individuals because they also need surplus to invest. If the taxation is very high for the corporates, then the investable surplus will go down. So it is not like there is sometimes debate about corporates making more money or this thing, but as a sound economic principle, I can say that corporations, they have to be taxed at a lesser rate.
for the growth of the economy, capital formation is very, very important. If you have more capital, you will invest in industry, you will put in more businesses, you will create employment, you will create business, you will increase economic activity. Similarly, to encourage some particular industry like electricity and power, we said whosoever put a plant for 5 years or 10 years, we will not tax you. In order to promote IT, we said, all right, whosoever have a IT setup or software setup, we will not tax you.
If we look at the revenues of the government, earnings of the government, 60% of those come from taxes of all different kinds. The most startling thing about that statistic is that 15% comes from corporate taxes and exactly 15% comes from individual income taxes. Is that fair?
Corporation tax, the tax collection didn't go down as a result of reducing the tax. So a lower taxation incidence that leaves more money for consumption, but the government then they have their so many welfare schemes. How do you fund that? So that is a very delicate balancing act which the governments have to do. They need resources.
It's not the middle class which is paying bulk of the direct taxes. It's the business class which is paying bulk of the direct taxes, because the corporate tax collection is entirely paid by businesses, and within the personal income tax also it's the firms etc. that are paying bulk of the tax. So the middle classes are paying hardly 20-25% of the direct taxes. The rest is being paid by the business community. Okay, so therefore to say that the middle class is burdened is also not very true.
The consensus is that we should have some tax on corporation, even though we tax the thing. That is a broad consensus now. But there have been economic schools in the US, Europe, UK who say no, you should have zero tax on corporation because you're taxing the people who actually get the money. I don't agree with that, especially in a country like India. We have to have this as a collection point. But this simplistic argument is just plain wrong.
Something that begs attention in this country is it only the rich or the people who are making more money who are getting the tax benefit? Taxes on the corporates have been brought down consistently over the last few decades. This budget even saw the surcharges on the super rich being brought down.
My fourth announcement in personal income tax is regarding the highest tax rate, which in our country is 42.74%. This is among the highest in the world. I propose to reduce the highest surcharge rate from 37% to 25% in the new tax regime. This would result in the reduction of the maximum tax rate to 39%.
Is it time for the middle class, at least the upper middle class, to also benefit from some reductions in the higher slab?
More than the middle class, I think the poor are saying, you are reducing taxes on the very rich, who in spite of COVID have seen an increase in their income and profits. So the middle class has suffered, but we are a country with many more of the poor. They probably have a greater right to ask, why 60% of the wealth of the country is in the hands of 1%?
Why does the government collect taxes? For welfare schemes, to uplift the poor. Now, the agricultural sector does not pay taxes. They have their reliefs. There is a general argument that the corporates are the ones who are creating jobs because they are investing in capital. But most of the jobs that they are creating are in the lower income groups, the maximum numbers. They get away with no tax. The heavy lifting is left to the middle class who are paying the taxes.
In many ways, our economy is lopsided. Services sector contributes the greatest percentage to GDP. After that comes industry and manufacturing. But agriculture which employs the maximum number of people in the country, almost 60%, contributes about 14 to 16% to the GDP. So unless you see a radical change in terms of either agricultural incomes or the growth of a labor-intensive manufacturing sector, which can absorb the unemployed and underemployed in agriculture, I do not see a middle class which is getting from society what they expect to get.
Well, Amit, that particular wisdom that was there when they were talking about it, that, I was keenly listening to it, saying that when corporates have the taxes reduced, you think that they are actually going to spend it further on, create more opportunities. But that is somewhere flawed, isn't it?
Yeah. So the capital investment has come down, but in percentage terms, but in volume terms, it has gone up. So yeah, so there is an argument that if you are reducing corporate taxes, even in percentage terms, the capital investment should go up. But because the volumes have increased so much, that in percentage terms it has come down. But yes, there is a case that if corporate taxes are being brought down from as much as 45% to 25%, and the big slab surcharges on the highest super rich income groups is also brought down, then the highest slab for the middle class also deserves a little reduction right now.
Okay.
I would ask
Krishna,
Krishna
how do you see that?
How reduce taxes for the middle class? We've shown 2 documentaries to explain to people why the middle class is so overtly taxed. I don't think we can say this anymore. Do what you want to, but you got to find ways to rationalize taxes for the middle class. No government in history in India has done it. We're hoping that this government does it. It's been very conscious about the problems of the middle class. That's the reason why you have the new tax regime. In fact, I use the new tax regime in which, without any disclosures, my taxes, I didn't have to pay any taxes. So the new tax regime does have its advantages. So this government does take into cognizance the pain of the middle class when it comes to buying taxes. And I hope there are greater solutions going forward.
Well, greater solutions, let's see whether that is something that we would have in our hands. Well, it looks like the tax burden right now is on the middle class. You have those 2 documentaries out there, and also keep an eye for that E-Rupee, which is also an interesting explanation about how RBI is trying to digitalize the rupee and the challenges as well as the hopes associated with that, all on our News9 Plus documentary website, where you can go and access these documentaries. With that, it's a wrap on this discussion. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining with us. On the other side, stay tuned to News9. More updates coming on different aspects of the news on the other side.
China won't let us rest easy on our borders, but they will keep flooding our markets. What does Xi Jinping really want?
I think he wants the Indian market, no doubt about it. It's really a matter of showing their dominance.
India's great Chinese conundrum.
Nobody can contain it. Not the United States, not China, not anybody else.
Frenemies. Streaming now